There is something very unusual about people who grew up in the 1970s. They are not just different in their memories, they are different in the way they respond to life itself. Many of them step into problems without panicking. They face emptiness without fear. They can be alone without feeling hollow inside. And the important thing is, this is not just nostalgia. Psychology can explain it. They grew up during a very specific period, a time when children were not managed every minute, when their schedules were not packed full, when there were no phones to hide in whenever they felt sad, and when adults were not always standing nearby to solve everything for them. That environment quietly reshaped their brains in a way that children today rarely get to experience anymore. Today, many people believe that the more carefully children are protected, the better they will develop. The more closely adults follow them, the fewer mistakes they make, the fewer collisions they have with life, the safer they will be. It sounds very reasonable, but there is a paradox that is hard to deny. Some generations grew up with less supervision, less structure, and less intervention, yet entered adulthood with a very clear kind of strength. The 70s generation is one of those examples. They did not grow up in an optimized world. They grew up in a rougher one. But that roughness created something psychologists call adaptive autonomy, the ability to develop independence through experience. Not neglect, but enough space to handle things on their own so the brain could learn how to mature. The first thing that kind of childhood created was the ability to solve problems on your own. Think back to a familiar scene. A weekend afternoon. No phone, no YouTube, no one handing you an activity. You walk out and say, "I'm bored." And the answer is, usually go find something to do. That one sentence alone forced the brain to start working. You had to think for yourself, find your own game, fill the empty space on your own. In that moment, you were not just killing time. You were learning how to create direction out of emptiness. If you were that kind of person, subscribe to the channel right now and keep watching, because the further this goes, the more you will understand why that childhood quietly shaped the person you are today. When no one planned things for them, children began creating their own worlds. A yard became a secret base. A few pieces of wood became a fortress. A boring afternoon turned into an adventure. It sounds small, but psychologically, that is when the brain learned a major skill: how to create meaning on its own. Many adults today feel lost when there is no clear guidance. But people who grew up the old way are often different. They can face uncertainty and still know how to begin. They do not wait for everything to be perfect before acting. They are used to figuring things out, trying, failing, and fixing. That childhood did not offer them many ready-made choices. But because of that, it gave them something more valuable: the ability to become the person who opens the path for themselves. The second thing that generation gained was the ability to calibrate risk. They climbed trees higher than was considered safe. They rode bikes faster than they should have. They played games that would make adults today nervous just hearing about them. And yes, they got scratched. Sometimes they fell hard. Sometimes they were truly scared. But psychological research shows that children who play in environments with moderate physical risk often develop a better sense of danger as they grow up. Why? Because the nervous system does not learn through theory. It learns through experience. A near fall teaches you your limits. A bad landing teaches you the difference between excitement and real danger. Avoiding all risk is not what makes someone strong. Sometimes it is controlled exposure to risk that teaches people how to stay calm. That is why, as adults, so many people from that generation have an easy-to-recognize quality: they do not panic too quickly. Other people freeze when they see a crisis. They look, assess, and respond, not because they are more reckless, but because they learned very early that not everything scary is a disaster. Some things are just challenges. Some things can be overcome if you stay calm. They know that a little pain does not always mean something is broken. A small mistake does not always mean the end. And that is something modern life is lacking. Too many people are protected from small collisions, so when a real crisis arrives, their nervous system reacts as if the whole world is collapsing. The third effect runs even deeper: emotional self-regulation. Think of a day when you came home from school with a tight feeling in your chest. Someone said something that hurt you. Something happened that made you feel ashamed. But back then, you could not instantly text 10 people. You could not open social media and find comfort within 30 seconds. You only had yourself. Maybe you lay still on your bed. Maybe you stared at the ceiling. Maybe you felt angry, sad, or upset. And just let the feeling move through you. If you remember that feeling, comment 8 below. because those quiet moments that seemed lonely were actually teaching a powerful lesson. Emotions do not last forever. They rise. They stay for a while. Then they settle. Psychological research has long viewed early emotional self-regulation as a key foundation for stable relationships and effective work in adulthood. People who do not need to react immediately usually see more clearly. People who do not need to release every feeling right away usually do less damage. The 70s generation was not always comforted in the right way, but they accidentally learned a very real kind of inner endurance. They learned how to sit with discomfort without falling apart immediately. They learned to wait for sadness to pass. They learned that some wounds do not need to be broadcast to the whole world in order to heal. This does not make them emotionally cold. On the contrary, it makes them deeper, steadier, and less likely to be pulled too far away by temporary feelings. The fourth thing was the ability to delay gratification. It sounds small in daily life, but it shapes personality in a major way. Back then, if you wanted to watch your favorite show, you had to wait for the exact time slot. If you missed it, it was gone. If an episode ended at the most exciting moment, then what? You waited a week. Want to call your friends? Wait until the phone is free. Want to buy something you like? Wait until you save enough money. Life was full of waiting. And those repeated stretches of waiting trained the nervous system to endure, to pause, to not demand instant satisfaction. Research shows that people who can delay rewards tend to have better impulse control, more stable relationships, and greater endurance in long-term work. Modern life, meanwhile, almost does the opposite. Everything comes too fast. Watch now, buy now, text now, entertain yourself now, release your emotions now. And when the brain becomes used to instant gratification, patience begins to shrink. That is why so many young people today are intelligent but struggle to tolerate slowness, repetition, uncertainty, and the lack of immediate feedback. But people who grew up in the 1970s often have a very particular kind of toughness. They can endure the phase where results have not arrived yet. They do not need an immediate reward in order to keep going. Not because they are more special than anyone else, but because their entire childhood accidentally became a long training course in patience. And this is the most important part. If you sometimes look at the world today and feel out of step, maybe the problem is not that you are outdated. Maybe you are simply carrying qualities that modern society no longer knows how to nurture. Your silence is not necessarily distance. Sometimes it is depth. Your independence is not coldness. Sometimes it is strength. The fact that you do not need instant responses, constant entertainment, or immediate understanding from everyone can sometimes be a power. If that feels true for you, comment 9. Because maybe you are not falling behind at all. Maybe you were just shaped by a time when children were still trusted to get back up after small collisions with life. That childhood was not perfect. It had its hardships. It could be hard and lacking in ways that clearly needed to be better. But one truth is difficult to deny. It shaped people who knew how to manage on their own, how to endure, how to wait, how to stay calm, and how to keep going, without needing the whole world to clear the path for them first. That is why so many people from that generation still carry a very distinct kind of steadiness. If this video touched something true in you, thank you for watching all the way to the end. Please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who also grew up in that time. Maybe they need to hear this too. They are not outdated at all. They were simply forged by a kind of childhood that has almost disappeared today.